Welcome back to my channel. If you are just logging in and you are just doing this for the first time today, please go back to part 1 or go back to the part that you stopped on beforehand so that you do not miss chunks of the book. Yesterday we read 2 chapters. The first one was called Nowhere to Stomp To, and it was about how there is no space in her house. So Angelina, loves to act like a horse, a pony, and she set up a barn in the kitchen underneath the table, so Amy Ann could not work on the index cards and the due date cards for her library club in the kitchen, and her other sister was in her room using her bedpost as a ballet bar. So there was no space anywhere. The office, Flotsam and Jetsam, followed her and were stepping on all of her things because there was so much stuff stuck in that room. And Mom and Dad were watching a TV show, so she couldn't go in the kitchen. So Amy Ann was kind of pushed to the side by her family, is a better way to say it. Kind of like she's old enough to figure out what she needs to do, so she isn't getting the help from her parents like she wants. The second chapter that we read was called The Right to Bear Arms. This was about how Trey and Amy Ann are working together on their project for social studies, and Trey has drawn all these pictures, but they're not real pictures. They're not like pictures of what the actual things are. They're kind of making fun of it. So he drew a picture of a man with huge furry arms and claws at the end. So the right to bear arms. So the right to, like, an actual animal bear arms. So he's kind of just doing like a spin on words, play on words of what the actual amendments are, which is funny. And Amy Ann wants to laugh at her, but she doesn't at the same time. She doesn't want to be friends because Trey has done 2 things to her in the past. Trey has drawn a picture of her as a tiny little mouse chewing on its tail, and that upset Amy Ann. And then the other thing is that his mom, Trey's mom, has banned her favorite books from the library. So we're going to start this chapter. It's called And in This Corner. I kept trying to focus on liar and spy in my spot in the corner of the library, but all I could think about was Trey. He'd seen my list of banned books on my locker and studied it enough to draw it, and get all the books right on the list. That meant he had to know it had been taken down too. I thought he would have wanted that. But the way he acted when he showed me the picture, it was like he was embarrassed or sorry. "Hey," Trey said. I jumped, spitting out the braid I was sucking on. I was just thinking about him, and there he was, standing next to me. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to scare you. I drew a new picture of the right to assemble, and I wanted to show it to you before I went home." Trey showed me. He'd drawn it right this time. The picture was of a bunch of people standing on a sidewalk with signs in their hands that all said, "Vote no." All but one. It said, "Magnets. How do they work?" "Magnets? How do they work?" I asked him. "How do they work? It's like magic," he said. His smile told me he was joking. "Anyway, that guy has as much right to be there as the rest of them, right?" "Yeah," I said. "Only that's not the freedom of assembly. That's the freedom of speech." "Yeah," Trey said. He looked at the floor again. "The rest of it works, though," I said. "And you draw really great. All the faces are different, and you even drew the hands. Anytime I had to draw a person, I drew her with her hands behind her back or stuck in her pockets, because I couldn't draw hands and fingers." Trey shrugged. "If you want to draw comic books, you have to be able to draw hands." I was about to ask Trey if that's what he wanted to do, draw comic books, when we both heard his mother's voice there in the library. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Jones," Mrs. Spencer said. "Mrs. Spencer," Mrs. Jones said. Mrs. Jones was wearing a wide green dress with white polka dots. Mrs. Spencer was wearing a tiny powder blue tracksuit. They looked like the illustrations for Big and Little in a picture book. and they stood staring at each other like those two Dr. Seuss characters who won't get out of each other's way while people build interstates around them. Is Trey in the library? Mrs. Spencer asked finally. I think he's in the back, Mrs. Jones said. She nodded down the aisle to us, and my heart beat faster. It was dumb. Mrs. Spencer didn't know who I was or what I was doing with her list of banned books. But I was still so nervous I stuck one of my braids in my mouth and sucked on it. Trey, it's time to go, Mrs. Spencer called. I guess my ride's here, Trey said. See you. Mrs. Spencer put her hand on Trey's head and was leading him out of the library when Mrs. Jones stopped them. Oh, Mrs. Spencer, I meant to thank you, she said. Mrs. Spencer turned around. Thank me? For the money you and the PTA raised to bring an author to the school. I just booked someone to visit, Dave Pilkey. Mrs. Spencer frowned, trying to place the name. Didn't he write the Captain Underpants books? Yes, Mrs. Jones said. That you banned, she could have said, but she didn't have to because we all knew it. Mrs. Spencer darkened. Do you really think that's such a good idea right now? She asked. I think it's a great idea, Mrs. Jones said. Mrs. Spencer looked so small and so mad that I half expected her to say, Oh yeah, well, you just wait till Helen comes. Then you'll be sorry. Instead, she turned and led Trey out of the library, her chest heaving in her tracksuit, almost as much as if she'd actually exercised in it. Round 3 in the boxing match had gone to Mrs. Jones. Maybe this fight wasn't over yet. Helen comes again. So the last time that we read a chapter that called Helen Comes, it wasn't a good chapter. That was a chapter that Principal Banana had called Amy Ann into her office to take down the list of banned books. She thought that Amy Ann was protesting about the books, but didn't actually realize that she had the books in her locker, and that was the list of books that she had in her locker. So, this chapter being titled Helen Comes Again, it makes me think that something bad might happen again. Wait till Helen comes sat in the middle of the cafeteria floor where everyone could see it. Coltrane Farmer had been carrying it in secret under his tray when he ran into Orlando Choi, who was horsing around with Steve Rosales. Coltrane was a white second grader with sandy brown hair that laid flat on his head like a Roman general from my history books. He was currently obsessed with rock collecting, and when his tray went flying, it sent mac and cheese, chocolate milk, and a dozen minerals of various shapes, sizes, and colors clattering and splattering all over the floor, along with Wait Till Helen Comes. The kids in the cafeteria were still clapping and cheering for him, but I could barely hear them, or notice the splattered food and scattered rocks. Even the gross wet rag smell of the tables went away. It was like the only thing in the room for me at that moment was that book, laying right there, out in the open, like a spotlight was on. All right, that's enough, Principal Banana told everybody. Principal Banana? Let me help you, Principal Banana told Coltrane, and she bent over to pick up the book. In 5 seconds, Detective Banana was going to pick up Prosecution Exhibit A in the case of the Wake County School Board versus Amy Ann Ollinger, and there wasn't a thing I could do about it but sit and watch. That's my seat, someone across the room yelled. I was sitting there. Sit on this, someone else yelled. 2 boys tumbled on the floor, kicking and pulling and punching. Just as quickly as they had cheered for Coltrane, the students in the cafeteria started chanting, Fight! 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 I couldn't see who it was. They were just a tangle of arms and legs before kids fell into a circle around them to watch. Principal Banana stood up, handed the book to Coltrane without even looking at it, and ran for the fight. Break it up! Break it up! She cried. I hurried over to Coltrane. He had picked up his empty chocolate milk carton and was pretending to drink from it. Ah, he said. Refreshing. Go hide that in your locker, I whispered to him. He looked at the chocolate milk carton. What, this? No, the book. He looked at the book in his hands and his eyes went wide as he understood. Oh gosh, sorry, he said. Just hurry, I told him, and don't bring it to read in the cafeteria again. Coltrane hurried off. I went back to my seat and put my head on the table. That had been so close. Coltrane would have gotten in trouble, and then he would have to tell them where he got the book. The locker library was going great, but that meant that there was a lot of banned books out there in the hands of Shelburne Elementary students. It was only a matter of time until another one of them slipped up and got caught with a book. Danny and Rebecca sat down next to me as the teacher sent everyone back to their seats. Was that wait till Helen comes? Rebecca asked. Yes, I told her, and Principal Banana had it in her hands. Lucky thing there was a fight, Danny said. He combed his hair away from his eyes. Anybody see who it was? We all got an answer at the same time. The crowd cleared and Principal Banana and Miss Green emerged with a different boy in hand. One of them I'd seen in the 4th grade hall but didn't know. The other one was Jeffrey Gonzalez. That was my seat, Jeffrey yelled. He lunged for the other boy again, but Principal Banana held him back. That's enough, Principal Banana said. We're all going to my office. This time there was no fake oohing from the students. This was real. Big time trouble, and they knew it. As soon as they were gone, the cafeteria exploded with excited chatter of everyone reliving every detail of the fight. As bad as it was for Jeffrey, it had been a lucky thing the fight started when it did. Or maybe it wasn't lucky. Maybe Jeffrey had seen the book on the floor and started the fight as a distraction. But did Jeffrey even know about the BBLL? He hadn't that day we'd walked to the office together. If he'd done it on purpose, it was quick thinking. If he hadn't, it was just perfect timing for me. Either way, Jeffrey was going to be in big trouble, and either way, I owed him a big thank you. Let's stop there for a second. Do you guys remember who Jeffrey Gonzalez was? The last little bit of this chapter kind of explained it a little bit more, but if you remember, in the last chapter that was titled Helen Comes, whenever Amy Ann got in trouble in the office, Jeffrey Gonzalez was also sent to the office at the same time. It didn't really say what had happened, but whenever he left her office, Principal Banana was saying, oh, I'm sure she was a great woman, she'll be missed, and something about his grandma. So it didn't quite come out and say what had happened, but I think we can all kind of assume or predict what had happened with his grandma. So that's going to be one of our questions today. So please think about that. What happened to Jeffrey Gonzalez and his grandmother?
Hey guys, thanks for checking in and watching and listening to the book as we go on. Make sure that you're washing your hands and staying safe and staying clean during this time, and we'll see you when we see you. Bye.